Hey there, my wonderful own little kitchen family. Today, we're going to take a fun little journey through the story of Thanksgiving. We'll explore some of the things you might already know and uncover a few hidden gems that might surprise you. It's a time to celebrate, but also reflect on both the joyous and more complex moments that come with this holiday. So grab a cozy drink, get comfy, and let's dive into some history, heart, and maybe even a little bit of the unexpected. The origins of Thanksgiving. The widely held narrative of Thanksgiving originates from a feast in 1621 at Plymouth Colony in present-day Massachusetts. This event is often mythologized as a harmonious gathering between English Pilgrims and Native Americans, specifically the Wampanoag people, to celebrate a successful harvest. According to historical accounts, the Pilgrims, who had struggled with hunger and disease during their first winter in the New World, were helped by the Wampanoag in cultivating crops and hunting. In turn, the Pilgrims invited their native allies to a feast to give thanks for their good fortune and to celebrate the harvest. However, the commonly portrayed image of a peaceful and friendly gathering is oversimplified. While there was a feast in 1621, the dynamics between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag were much more complex. The Pilgrims were in a precarious position, having arrived on land that was already inhabited by indigenous peoples. The Wampanoag, led by Chief Massasoit, were seeking to secure an alliance with the English for mutual protection against rival tribes such as the Narragansett, as well as the growing influence of the French and Dutch settlers in the region. The idea of a friendly feast often overlooks the tensions and the eventual negative consequences that would follow this initial moment of cooperation. The subsequent years saw more settlers arrive, and as the colony expanded, relations between the English and Native Americans began to deteriorate. Disease, land encroachment, and differing worldviews created conflicts, and by the time of King Philip's War, 1675 to 1678, which was led by Massasoit's son Metacomet, King Philip, relations had turned violent. The evolution of the holiday. The history of Thanksgiving as a national holiday took centuries to fully develop, and its transformation reflects changing social and political dynamics in the United States. Early celebrations. After the 1621 feast, the idea of Thanksgiving did not immediately become an annual tradition. Various colonies celebrated days of Thanksgiving at different times, often marking specific events such as a military victory or the end of a drought. These early observances were not standardized, and the nature of these celebrations varied greatly. Sarah Josepha Hale and the Campaign for a National Holiday. The push to make Thanksgiving a national holiday began in the 19th century, largely due to the efforts of Sarah Josepha Hale, the author of Mary Had a Little Lamb. In the 1840s, Hale launched a campaign to establish a national day of Thanksgiving, hoping to unify the country and offer a moment of peace and gratitude during the tumultuous years leading up to the Civil War. Hale's influence, along with growing support from both the North and the South, ultimately led President Abraham Lincoln to proclaim Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863 during the Civil War as a way to foster unity and healing. Thanksgiving and the Civil War. Lincoln's declaration of Thanksgiving as a national holiday marked a significant shift in the meaning of the holiday. It was no longer just a regional or localized event, but a day meant to bring the divided country together. Lincoln, however, did not call for reconciliation with Native Americans or recognize the plight they were facing. Instead, Thanksgiving became a holiday that symbolized the union of the North and South while disregarding the historical and contemporary struggles of indigenous peoples. Post-Civil War and the 20th century. Thanksgiving celebrations became more standardized in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, largely influenced by the commercialization of the holiday. By the 1930s, the tradition of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City began, and Thanksgiving became more closely associated with consumerism, football games, and a focus on feasting. The narrative of a harmonious relationship between settlers and Native Americans, which had its roots in the early 1621 feast, continued to dominate the public imagination, despite the historical record showing a more complicated relationship. The bad history: impact on Native Americans. For many Native Americans, Thanksgiving is not a time of celebration, but one of mourning and reflection on the loss of their lands, cultures, and lives. The 1621 feast, while significant in American history, marks the beginning of a long and painful period of colonization for indigenous peoples. The loss of land and culture. The arrival of European settlers, beginning with the Pilgrims, resulted in the displacement of native peoples from their ancestral lands. Over the centuries, settlers encroached upon and took control of vast areas of land that had been inhabited for thousands of years. The Native Americans who initially helped the Pilgrims survived, in part, by adapting to new trade relationships, but as more settlers arrived, these alliances broke down, and indigenous people were pushed off their land, often through violent means. Disease and death. One of the most devastating effects of European colonization was the spread of diseases to which Native Americans had no immunity. Smallpox, influenza, and other diseases decimated indigenous populations long before many settlers engaged in direct violence. It's estimated that in the first century, after European contact, native populations in the Americas were reduced by as much as 90%. Violence and forced assimilation. Following the early decades of cooperation, tensions between settlers and Native Americans escalated into violent conflict, such as the Pequot War in 1636 and King Philip's War in 1675. These wars resulted in massive loss of life for Native peoples and further entrenched the dispossession of their land. Even after these conflicts, the U.S. government continued policies of forced relocation and assimilation, such as the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which led to the Trail of Tears. Modern-day Thanksgiving and Native American activism. Many Native American groups have used the day to draw attention to the ongoing issues facing their communities. Since 1970, Native American activists have held a National Day of Mourning on Thanksgiving at Plymouth Rock in Massachusetts to protest the holiday's association with colonialism and the destruction of Native cultures. The holiday represents for many Native Americans the beginning of centuries of exploitation, violence, and marginalization. The good history, the spirit of gratitude and unity. Despite its painful history, Thanksgiving for many represents a time of reflection on gratitude, community, and family. Over time, the holiday has evolved to focus more on these positive aspects, a time for family and community. In modern America, Thanksgiving is primarily a family holiday. For many, it's a time to come together, share a meal, and express gratitude for the good things in their lives. The emphasis on family, food, and fellowship is central to how most people experience the holiday today, and it provides an opportunity for many to pause and reflect on what they are thankful for. Economic and social contributions. Thanksgiving has also contributed to the American economy, particularly in terms of retail and food industries. The Thursday holiday encourages travel, family gatherings, and most notably, a large-scale food industry production to support the holiday's feasts. The holiday has become a time for charity as well, with many Americans volunteering at food banks, homeless shelters, and community organizations to help those in need. National unity. Thanksgiving, as declared by Abraham Lincoln, was meant to foster a sense of national unity. Today, it continues to serve as a reminder of the importance of collective gratitude and the coming together of diverse groups. The spirit of the holiday reflects a broader sense of national identity, even if the history of how the U.S. came to be is far more complicated. Changing traditions, from pilgrims to parades. Thanksgiving's evolution over the years has led to new traditions that shape how it is celebrated today. Parades, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day. Parade, which began in 1924, has become one of the most iconic parts of Thanksgiving. Parades are held in many cities across the country, and they have become a major part of the American Thanksgiving experience. Football. Watching football on Thanksgiving Day has become a popular tradition for many families. The NFL has capitalized on this with annual Thanksgiving Day games, a tradition dating back to 1934. Feasting. The Thanksgiving meal has evolved as well. While turkey remains the centerpiece of many families' tables, regional variations have added dishes like cornbread, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, and pies. The feast is an important part of the holiday, symbolizing abundance and the spirit of sharing. Conclusion. Thanksgiving is a holiday with deep roots in American history, and its meaning has changed over the centuries. For many, it's a time of celebration, family, and gratitude, but for others, it's a painful reminder of the colonization and displacement of indigenous peoples. The historical narrative of Thanksgiving often overlooks the long-term effects of European settlement on native communities, and while modern celebrations may focus on themes of unity and family, it's important to remember and acknowledge the darker aspects of the holiday's history. By doing so, we can create a more inclusive understanding of what Thanksgiving means and reflect on the broader implications of both its good and bad history. I'm Roger Michaels, and I hope you've learned something valuable today about the history of Thanksgiving. However you celebrate, make sure your heart is as full as your belly, and your spirit is warm and inviting, like a fireplace at the centerpiece of a room. Again, I am Roger Michaels with my own little kitchen, and I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving.